Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this list for the first Doctor stories. This is very important, you know. Back in history, a lot of the first Doctors and second Doctor stories were gotten rid of. So, this list is based on any recreations I can find. Also, before we start, this is my list. I have my own personal tastes. There's some things I like in my Who. There's some things I don't like in my Who. So, also, I try to take into consideration the times, but there's a couple of elements that's really hard to do so. But we'll get into that later. Number 29. Marco Polo. To begin with, I tried to watch the full-length version recreation, but after the first episode, I had no idea what was going on, and I will admit it was really bad quality. So I then remembered that I've got one of the DVDs in the beginning box set, The Edge of Destruction, had a cut-down version of it, a half-hour-long version. So I thought I'd watch that instead. To just get an idea of the story, and I still had no idea what the hell was going on. Now, to my understanding after watching it about 3 times, I believe the TARDIS malfunctions. Don't know why, but it malfunctions, and then is found by Marco Polo, who wants to give the TARDIS to the Khan to help him get back to his homeland. It was really hard to follow. That's the reason why this is last place for me, because I could barely follow what the hell was going on. So it was a really difficult watch for me, and I thought what was going on was a bit boring. So again, I know there's some people that like this story, but I just couldn't get into it. But this is why it's my list. Number 28. The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. The Doctor lands in 1572 Paris as a girl hears about a plot to massacre people, and Stephen wants to save her. Yeah, I'm trying not to have any massive spoilers in this. There's gonna be a couple of minor spoilers. A lot of the time I don't even want to name the assistants for spoiler reasons, because if they're assistants, you know what happens to them. But this one I kind of needed to. The thing about this story is I barely remember anything of it. The only thing that I can remember vividly is the ending. I don't want to get into the spoilers, as I said, but the ending is really weird and completely out of place from the rest of the episode, and it's a bit okay. It's brought up as an assumption, but there's an assumption added to the ending to make everything okay, but it's a bit of a long shot and a bit of weird coincidence. It was just strange. One of the worst things you can have in a story is forgettableness. So that's why this one's number 28. Number 27. The Reign of Terror. The Doctor and co. land in 18th century France. All 3 assistants get captured, and the Doctor has to go in disguise to rescue them. Now, this story, I remember. I fell asleep. it was quite a hard slog to get through. I'm not a big fan of the historical stories, I will admit that, and that does come into play in this list quite significantly. Yeah, they are a bit of a slog for me to get through, and this one's a bit difficult too. Number 26. The Smugglers. The Doctor land in 17th century Cornwall as they meet a man who not only helps them find shelter, but tells the Doctor a strange secret riddle. A bit later, that man is then murdered by pirates. And then the pirates kidnap the Doctor. The assistants then get arrested for the man's murder. Now, this story has a lot of potential, but is dragged on way too long. But it probably isn't helped by the fact that this 4-parter, I believe it is, 2 of the parts I found were really bad quality. It's like every second there was like a bleep, and so it was really difficult to ignore it and get through, so it was a bit of a slog. And I don't think that's very fair on the story, but as I said, I can only judge these stories on what I can find of them. I can definitely see the Doctor being taken by pirates and finding buried treasure. Definitely see it having potential. That's I guess is a bit of a spoiler, but these are pirates we're talking about. Of course they're looking for buried treasure. Number 25. The Romans. After they stay in ancient Rome, the Doctor and the youngest assistant go off into town. After they do this, the 2 older assistants get kidnapped and sold into slavery. The Doctor then gets mistaken as a musician and then asked to play at the palace. Now this goes into a bit of spoilers, I guess, but not massively, but it comes into one of the big problems I have with this episode. The female of the 2 older assistants, it's really difficult to try not to use their names, but I'm trying. It's what I decided to do, so yeah. She gets obviously sold into slavery, and her slave owner gets a bit rapey. And not only is it rapey, it's played as a carry-on rapey, like ooh kind of thing. And it's really uncomfortable to watch, especially when you know this is like aimed at kids, especially back then. I know it was a different time, but that one's one of the lines that's a bit difficult to cross. So, yeah. Number 24. Planet of the Giants. The TARDIS malfunctions and lands in modern day. This is 1964. And turns out what the malfunction did is shrunk the TARDIS, so the Doctor and all the assistants are the size of bugs. They then leave the TARDIS and discover that all the bugs are dead. But what exactly killed them and what's going on? So, yeah. The problem I have with this episode is, unless I remember incorrectly, which it is possible because there's a bit where the telephone, which I don't think comes into play, but it could do. But I really don't think it does. Trying to remember. I don't think the Doctor and the assistants being there, even in a small state, affects the story in the slightest. If you took them out and just played the story without these shrunken people running around, what ends up happening would still happen. So, yeah, that's not a good sign. And how they get big again, kind of okay. So it's a bit of a nothing really happens. Something happens to one of the assistants, which of course gets fixed by the end of the episode, which I guess is a spoiler, but it's kind of a bit empty. Plus, I don't think they go far enough with the concept, because all the bugs are dead, and I understand that's probably done for budgetary reasons. There's a couple of little things and a couple of simple things that are made a lot difficult because of the small stature that they try and do, but I don't think they go far enough. And I know there's a lot of traits that get brought into these kinds of stories, but when you take them away, why are they small? Number 23, the Keys of Mardinus. Mardinus? I'm not sure how to say that. Big space age words. Probably got that wrong, but there we go. The Doctor and co land on a planet that is being attacked by the Vord? Yeah, Vord. I think it's Vord. They meet a scientist that asks them to collect 4 keys in order to beat the Vord. I don't remember a lot of this story, I will admit. But there is one thing I definitely remember, and that is the really, really cool brains in the jars. It was a bit cheesy, but I remembered them putting a big smile on my face. And other than that, I don't remember a lot of this story, and that's a problem. Number 22, the Crusade. The Doctor and co land in the 12th century and meet King Richard, whose sister is being planned to be married off to end the war with the Sultan. There is one thing I definitely remember about the man, and it's a big ass problem for a modern day viewer. And this is one where I can see back in the day, a different time, but it's difficult for me to get past, and that's blackface. Yeah, the Sultan, I'm pretty sure, is played by a white guy in blackface. Of course, most of what you see is just the stills, but yeah, it's not good. Number 21, the Gunfighters. The Doctor needs a dentist, so they land in the Wild West and meet Doc Holliday, and then they go to his dentist surgery while the Clintons are in town. Now, I'm surprised actually how high up on the list this is at number 21. Because I really don't like westerns very much. I love cowboy hats, but the setting in the Wild West usually tends to bore me, even with the sci-fi elements. But this one didn't bore me as much, but that could be part of one of the gimmicks of this story, and that's the singing narrator. A lot of people that I've seen online hate this and they think it's one of the worst Doctor Who stories, but I quite liked the singing narrator. But that could be because it's Aunt Mabel from Come Outside and nostalgia hit, and it put me a bit of a smile. Just every time she started singing about murders and things, I just hear,
look up, look down, look all around.
It did put a bit of a smile on my face, that, but other than that, still a Western. So, as I say, if that's your taste, that's good. But the only Western I know I like is Wild Wild West. So, yeah, people can rage at me at the comments about that one. But so yeah, it's just something I can't connect with. I don't know why. But cowboy hats are cool. Plus, they've got some really bad American accents. Usually I go crazy at the British accents when Americans do it, but this one I will go on your side. That's a bad American accent. Number 20. The Sensorites. The Doctor lands on a space station that is in orbit around the Sensorsphere, a planet that is inhabited by the Sensorites who won't let anyone leave. This one is really slow and drags on and on and on. But yeah, there's not much else to say really. The masks of the Sensorites are pretty cool. So that's a positive, I guess. And I'm amazed that how the way they looked with the budget they had at the time. So that's good. Number 19. The Mythmakers. The Doctor lands in Troy before the Trojan horse, but that's just a myth, right? In this one, I think the title of the story is a bit of a spoiler, but what are you going to do? There's not really much else to add. It's a historical drama, so I guess a bit boring, but there's a bit more to it, so it's trying to move up the list a bit. So yeah, there's really not much else to add to this. Number 18. The Edge of Destruction. The TARDIS malfunctions and does some strange things to alert the crew to this fact that they are in impending doom. Now, this story is 100% filler and is set completely 100% on board the TARDIS. So, of course, this means we learn more about the TARDIS, meaning it's a bit interesting. And also, where this story is only 2 episodes long, it doesn't have the problem of a lot of stories where they just add so much filler, ignoring the fact their whole story is practically filler. So it does move on at a reasonable good pace, but we'll say it's very confusing. There's a lot of strange things that happen and you have to try and work out what's going on. So this might be a bit more of a difficult one for some people, but it's only 2 episodes long. It's not like it's full of dragging on filler like some other stories. Number 17. The War Machine. The Doctor lands in modern day 1966, where someone invents a computer that can talk to all the other computers on the planet. The computer then becomes sentient and does what all sentient computers do, becomes hostile to the human race. This is where the list starts getting to some of the more enjoyable episodes, but of course this is one of the lowest of the more enjoyable episodes, so I like this one a lot. I really did enjoy watching this. There is a bit of drag on, as most stories do have where they just drag in the middle, where it's just so much filler, but I liked it. Number 16. The Chase. The Doctor gets chased through time and space by the Daleks. Yep. That's pretty much the entire synopsis. Now, this goes on way too long. And I'm pretty sure it's just more filler, because there are... I will admit they land in some quite nice sets. But the sets kind of don't feel like typical Doctor Who. So without researching it, because I haven't researched it, just looking at what I see, it would not surprise me if these are sets from other shows that have just been done up a little bit to change. Like they go in on a boat and they land in New York on top of the Empire State Building. And it would not surprise me at all if they belonged to other shows and he just put Daleks on them just so like, oh, this is Doctor Who. Just so they could fill out a few episodes. Because it does drag on. But of course this is Daleks. I love the Daleks. So in the worst Dalek episode, there's still a smile on my face because it's Daleks. Number 15. The Celestial Toymaker. The Doctor and co meet the Celestial Toymaker, who forces them to play his games. Now this is a very famous story in Doctor Who because this was potentially going to be the first regeneration story. Of course, it was postponed to a later date, but because of this hearing about it so much, I will admit I was a lot more interested in this story. So I think that extra interest helped move it up the list. But it does drag on in the middle, and the way the Doctor gets written out in the middle because of course William Hartnell was getting really sick at this point was a bit of a oi. But of course that comes into where the first regeneration was going to come in, because as the Doctor then returned from what happened, he was going to be then taken over by a new actor. And apparently the story goes that it was going to be, is this really the Doctor, or is this the one of the Toymaker's tricks? Which I think potentially could have saved this story, but caused more problems because in the future, because it would have been more difficult to recast it. Like, you'd have to bring the Celestial Toymaker in another 12 times. 13 if you count the War Doctor. In regeneration would have been completely different, rather than where they went with where it just happened. So it was a lot easier to write into more stories. Choosing not to use this story as the regeneration, it's probably the best thing they ever did for Doctor Who as a whole. But this one story, it definitely suffers, because that would have been a twist that the story kind of needed. But again, the interest kind of put it up the list a bit. I guess that's not really fair, but this is my list. I do what I want. Number 14. The Web Planet. The Doctor and co. land on a planet inhabited by human-sized insects. We have the bees and the ants. And of course, the Doctor gets caught in the middle of this war. Now, I will say this, for the time, this was a very, very ambitious story, and you can tell, like, at some points the bees fly, and yes, judging it at modern day, some of the effects are quite, you can clearly see the wires, for example, but I can see the ambition, and it brings you into the story. I feel, at least. A lot of people do rate this story a lot lower because of the effects, and of course the ant costumes, which I will say are pretty bad. It's just like a big plastic ant with these two human legs, just running around. And yeah, I will admit those are bad, but the bees, I think, look quite good for considering the budget and what they've got. I like them, but the ants, I admit, kind of a bit, yeah. That's bad. But I can see what they were going for. And of course, this story came after the Planet of the Giants. So I was like, you could have just put the two together, and yeah, possibly. But one thing I will say about this story is I was very, very happy that it wasn't just like big ants versus humans, or human analogues, where they're aliens, but they're not really aliens because they're just humans with big eyebrows, for example. So the fact that there were two bug-like alien races going to war, I like that, and it adds to part of the ambition. Number 13. The Rescue. A human ship crash lands on an alien planet when the entire crew except 2 members die. These 2 members then get held captive by a single alien who claims to be helping them. But has rescue come early? Now this is a 2-part story which works brilliantly for this story, because if you added a third it would just drag on in the middle. So I think the pace of this story works. Because of that, it builds the intrigue and the mystery at the right pace, so you just get caught up in the story. Number 12. The Daleks' Invasion of Earth. The Doctor and co. land in 2164, and the Daleks have already taken over the planet and forced a lot of them to mine. Now the Doctor has to take back the planet and stop. Now this story, I admit, is way too long, and you could probably half the amount of episodes and have a decent story in there. But that being said, it's Daleks, and Daleks rank up there. But of course the intrigue of what are the Daleks up to, why are they mining, how is the resistance going to take them down, and the menace that's starting to build, because this is only the 2nd Dalek story, and pretty much most of the characteristics of the Daleks come from this story, I believe. But yeah, this one I think is very important, especially if you're a fan of the Daleks like I am. This story should be watched, but you could probably cut a massive chunk in the middle out of the story and make it flow a hell of a lot smoother. Number 11. The Ark. The Doctor and co. land on a spaceship heading to a new planet for the humans to colonize. Now, the Doctor has a new assistant, and she's got a cold. The problem is for these humans, the common cold died out centuries ago, so they have no barrier for the cold to be killed by. So it hits them really, really hard. Now the Doctor has to help fix the mess he caused by bringing this assistant with him. The Doctor then returns to the ship 700 years in the future and finds out what his previous visit has done to this ship. Now this is technically a 4-part story. However, because you've got the two storylines, you've got the Common Cold storyline and then the 700 Years in the Future storyline, really it's not 4 parts, it's two 2-parters that are connected in the middle. Because of this, the pace goes a lot faster and doesn't have so much filler in it. So you've got a good paced story. Also, you've got the intrigue of the cold, and then of how the Doctor's going to fix it. And then afterwards, you've got a massive twist in the story in that middle connection when they come back 7 years in the future. And it's like, what happened? How did this change? So it really does draw you in. Number 10. Mission to the Unknown. 3 men crash land on a planet looking for information on the Daleks. Now, one of them gets infected by a plant that gives them an overwhelming urge to kill. This is a very special episode for a couple of reasons. Number 1, this is the only 1-part story in the entirety of the first Doctor's run. Also, this is the only no Doctor story in the first Doctor's run. And when I say no Doctor, this isn't just no Doctor, this is no assistants, this is a brand new team of people we're following for this one story. It does connect because this story is a prequel to the Daleks MASTERPLAN story, which I will say is a 12-parter, so if any story doesn't need a prequel, it's a 12-part story. That being said, on its own merits, there is a lot of intrigue and learning new things about these brand new characters and the way these plants interact with them. It really does draw you in. I think it helped that this is a lost episode, but I've managed to find an animation. This is an unofficial animation. I know that, but I do think that it helped me get drawn into the story a bit more. Because I think if I just had the audio, like a lot of people probably do when watching this story, that you could disconnect a bit. So I highly recommend that animation, and it helps that where this is a prequel, it doesn't answer all the questions, because obviously it leads into the future episode where the Doctor gets involved. But yeah, it really, really drew me in. Number 9. The Daleks MASTERPLAN. The Daleks form an alien alliance with different galaxies, including the guardian of the solar system. Now he gives them the last component required for a time disruptor that they're going to use to take over the universe. However, the Doctor finds out about this and steals it, so the Daleks and the guardian of the solar system have to chase him throughout time and space to get it back. As I said in number 10, this is a 12-part story, and by God, do you feel every second of it. There is so much filler. In fact, this isn't a spoiler. I guess technically it is a spoiler, but in the middle of the story, they land in modern day Earth, mention the Daleks. I think there's like one sentence in the beginning. Then they get captured by police, let go by police, then run through then get back in the TARDIS, change time period, run through a movie set, and then say Merry Christmas at the end because this was a Christmas special. So pretty much absolutely nothing, zero things happen that contributes to this story. So you could absolutely skip that episode and know exactly what's going on. And that's just one example. Most of the synopsis I've tried to lay out in this list are based on the first episode of their story. This one had to be part 2. The reason is I think there's 3 plot points that are important in part 1, and I think a lot of them get very, very minor. Not to mention there's another episode where just one plot point happens, and with a quick rewrite you could easily cut that whole episode out. Yes, there is kind of important to know that one plot point to know what happens, but as I say, quick rewrite, you could do that whole episode in 5 minutes of the next one. I would very much enjoy this story if someone takes all 12 part story and then just edits the hell out of it and just drop it down to, I think you could drop this 12 part story to 3 parts pretty easy, and it would make sense. That being said, with how long it is, you're like, well, why is it number 9 if you seem like so negative on it, and like why is it so high? The answer is the ending. Wow! If this was a top list, if this was a list of the ending of the stories, not only would this be number 1 on this list of the first Doctor story, it would be high up, even compared to modern day Who, which I know so much better. If you can find an edited down version, watch it. But if for no other reason for this ending, because yeah, it's good. It's good. It comes out of nowhere. You don't see it coming, and yeah, it's good. It's very good. It's very, very good. Number 8. The Space Museum. The TARDIS lands in a space museum when, everybody sing with me, it malfunctions. Now this malfunction causes them to see into their future. Now what they see is themselves as an exhibit in this space museum. So the rest of the story is spent with them trying to change this future. Now there is a lot of intrigue going into this episode about what this space museum is, why it's there, why isn't it? Is there not anyone else around other than these exhibits and that kind of thing? So it does draw you in quite significantly. Plus there's a lot of fan service Like one of the exhibits is a Dalek, for example. It kind of reminds you of the episode Dalek in New Who, where you see the Cyberman helmet, that kind of thing. So that is quite good. But yeah, the mystery kind of draws you in a bit. So you're like, what's going on? And trying to understand. I recommend it. It's good. Number 7. An Unearthly Child. Ian and Barbara are two teachers that follow a student home after they are worried about her. After meeting the doctor, they lead them burst into a police telephone box to discover it's not what it seems. The doctor then kidnaps them and begins their adventure in time and space as the doctor takes them to the Stone Age. Now, I will admit, I really struggled placing this one, where to put it, because this is an Unearthly Child. This is the very first episode of Doctor Who, very first story of Doctor Who. Now, if you separated it, so you had the Unearthly Child, the very first episode of Doctor Who, and then the Stone Age story, I could see the Unearthly, the first part going like probably number 7, maybe a bit even higher. And then the Stone Age story a lot lower on the list. But as it is, they're connected. So it's just one. So it's very difficult for me to place because it's iconic. It's the very, very first episode of Doctor Who. And that first episode, the first part, it builds everything. Trying to put it in your shoes then, you could see like a little child be amazed by this machine. But then they go to the Stone Age and they meet cavemen that they need to make fire. And that drags on. But I will say that it's kind of unfair how high I put this because it's the first one. But that means every single Doctor Who fan out there needs to watch the first part at least of the story. At least watch The Unearthly Child, because it's where it all began. And I think that's why I put it at number 7. Put it so high up on the list. Because it's so iconic and it built upon everything. The cavemen, I could probably do without. That being said, it's the very first one, so if you're gonna, you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. Number 6. Galaxy 4. The Doctor and Lako land on a planet and get stuck in a war between a race of beautiful women and an ugly alien that controls blind robot droids. Now, the reason why these two are fighting is because this planet is about to die and explode, and they've got to get off the planet. But only the ugly alien spaceship works. Now, I will admit, this is a typical beauty on the inside story. The beautiful women are quite nasty, and the ugly alien is quite kind. And it's well, I guess saying that is a bit of a spoiler, but it is quite obvious within 5 minutes where they're going, but that's not always a bad thing. And the despise you build towards this beautiful women race, you just want to go, screw you, go away. Just go away. Bugger off. But you really find yourself rooting for the ugly alien. So it does its job. You really find yourself like questioning the motive of the beautiful women, and it makes you sit back and think about certain things. So I could see a child watching this story and getting a good moral from it, and that I think is extremely important, especially media aimed at kids. That sometimes when things look different, it's okay. That kind of moral. Which is a bit hilarious considering they had blackface in a previous episode, so meh. Number 5. The Aztecs. The TARDIS lands in the Aztec era, inside one of the Aztec temples. The Aztecs then mistake Barbara as a goddess. Barbara then uses her new influence to try and end human sacrifice against the Doctor's wishes. Now, this is a period drama, and you learn a lot about the Aztecs from it. How accurate, I'm not sure, but I'm not a historian. But that being said, this is my number 1 historical drama story at number 5. And the reason for it is because even though it has that level of the historical drama, and there's just a sprinkling of sci-fi in there where they are time travelers and they're considering changing history for the better, as the Doctor then tries to explain to them why that's a bad idea and why changing the bad doesn't necessarily equal good. And it really does draw you in, even to someone who's not necessarily drawn into historical dramas. And I think as it had everything going against it for me, yet still managed to draw me in, it made me appreciate the story that much more. I say this, if you like historical dramas, I would recommend this one first. Number 4. The Savages. The Doctor lands on a planet so advanced they have been tracking the Doctor's adventures. Now, the Doctor is really impressed by this civilization until he discovers that they have found a way to extract the life force of others to consume themselves. Now, this story is pretty much an analogue for racism or classism. I could see an argument being made for both. You've got the people inside the city that are better than the savages on the outside because they're supposedly more civilized, yet they are using the savages as sustenance. Number 3. The Time Meddler. The Doctor and Co. land in 1066 before the Battle of Stamford Bridge, but things are not right. They discover a lot of technology that should not exist yet, and a strange monk. Now, I guess technically this is a little spoiler, but at the same time I think it's worth mentioning. This is the first story where we meet another Time Lord. Of course, it's never said in the story he's a Time Lord because Time Lords wasn't a thing yet. It wasn't until the end of the second Doctor's run until the words Time Lord were ever mentioned. But with the fact that it is highly hinted that the monk is of the same background as the Doctor, so we could assume from that he's a Time Lord. And looking at the monk, the easiest way of explaining him is he's kind of like a pseudo master. He's like the first draft of the master. I can definitely see aspects of the master coming out in the monk. And I really like it. He's not overly evil, but it's good. He's kind of like a likable villain, and I really enjoy that in a villain. Number 2, the Daleks. What? The Daleks is number 2? But what's left? Wait. Really? Uford? Let me get to that, but let's just talk about the Daleks. Of course, as I've mentioned in every other Dalek story on this list, the Daleks are my absolute favourite Doctor Who villain. I love the design of them, and it all starts here. So the Doctor lands on the planet Skaro without discovering that the planet is covered in radiation. They then discover a city inhabited by the Daleks when they discover their radiation sickness. The Daleks then inform them that they need some drugs from the Daleks' enemy on the planet, and they want them to bring the drugs back. Now, as this is the first ever Dalek story, of course I love it. Yes, it drags on a bit, just like 95% of the stories in classic Who. But it's the first ever Dalek story, man. Yes, every Doctor Who fan has to watch Unearthly Child as the number one you have to watch. Next, I would say Dalek. Seeing where the Daleks originally come from, it's important. Number 1. The 10th planet. The Doctor and Co. land in the South Pole in the near future, 1986. They make their way to a space tracking station where they discover a strange new planet in the sky that looks a lot like Earth. As the energy gets drained from Earth, they then get invaded by the Cybermen. That's right, this is the very, very first appearance of the Cybermen. Now, anyone who knows anything about how much I enjoy Doctor Who knows how much I dislike the Cybermen. I have nothing but love for the Daleks. I hate the Cybermen. But in watching this, I now know I don't hate the Cybermen. I hate New Who's Cybermen. Because the way the Cybermen used in this story is like, where the hell did that come from? Why the hell did they change them so much? Get rid of delete. The only one that should ever delete anything is Matt Hardy. Cybermen, no. These Cybermen are really creepy. And you look at them, if you just looked at a still picture, you're like, how? How? But these Mondasian Cybermen, work so well in this story. And I will admit, going into this story knowing the knowledge that this was the first regeneration, the very first, that gave me a little bit more urge to get invested in the story. But then the Cybermen took that and run with it. This story, to me, it's a 3-parter, but doesn't drag. There's a little bit of filler in there, but it's more of the situation, because a bit of a spoiler is that in the second part there is no Doctor, because obviously William Hartnell had to be written off because of how ill he was, but luckily managed to come back for part 3 so he could then regenerate into Patrick Troughton. It really surprised me. I was like, going into this episode, looking so much forward to seeing the regeneration, that the Cybermen just caught me off guard, especially for how much I dislike them. But now I seem to have a new appreciation for the Cybermen. And if this story could do that for me, if you even mildly like the Cybermen, you've got to watch this episode. And then of course you come to the regeneration, and I know it doesn't work quite right, but in my headcanon, while the second part is happening, the 12th Doctor's story, with last story where he meets the first Doctor, that's happening. I know it doesn't work because time freezes in that story, so yeah, but I kind of like how that flows. If you would go part 1 and then do the I'll forget the name of the episode, but you know the one, the very last of Peter Capaldi's run, where he meets the first Doctor. You can't say William Hartnell because obviously it's not William Hartnell. But he meets the first Doctor and then they have the adventure. To me, that happens at the same time as part 2. And to me, that makes it work even better. So, thank you so much for watching this really long list for my listing all of the first Doctor's stories. I've managed to not skip any stories, even though I had to watch some just audio because of the way the BBC got rid of a lot of the stories back then. Hopefully I'm going to do this for every Doctor, and yes, that does mean I am dreading Tom Baker. 7 seasons worth of Tom Baker. And if you think this is long, we'll wait till that comes along. Yeah. So yeah, really dreading that, but I'm planning to do it. So let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you liked this, please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more, or of course some of my gaming content, some of the Let's Plays and whatnot if you are new. And hopefully I'm going to be doing a lot more lists like this, even though they take me a lot longer to do. So, I am the Food. Thank you for watching.